Welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Wirtz and I'm a Business Relationship Manager at the University of Reading, and I'm the Director of the Thames Valley AI Hub Initiative. Thank you all so much for coming to our first event for 2021, Unravelling the Challenges for AI in Healthcare, co-hosted between the Thames Valley AI Hub and Bayer LifeHub UK. This is actually the second in a series of events for our collaboration, and it's great to be able to work together on a shared goal and showcase the latest state-of-the-art developments and help connect people to explore and develop AI solutions in life sciences. And we're really looking forward to seeing what comes out of today. And before we start, I'm just going to give a quick run through on how everything's going to work. Then I'm going to hand over to Lynn Collins, who is the lead at Bayer LifeHub UK and is Bayer's country head for radiology in UK and Ireland. Lynn will give a welcome from Bayer LifeHub UK and introduce our fantastic keynote speaker, Dr. Matthew Lungren. If you want to ask any questions to Dr. Lungren, please do use the chat function. And if you prefer to remain anonymous, then you can drop us an email at our usual email address, tvaihub@reading.ac.uk, and we can post it on your behalf. Around 3:30, after Matthew's talk and Q&A session, we'll move into our breakout rooms. Now, when registering, most of you selected a ticket with a specified discussion topic, and at the right time, you'll be automatically transferred into the associated breakout room. As not everyone joins the meeting using their Zoom email address, we can't allocate people into their breakout rooms ahead of the event. So my colleague Rowan is busy sorting that out in the background at the moment. So that he can assign people correctly, can you please check that the name displayed on your Zoom icon is the name you signed up with? And that way Rowan can easily work out who is who, and when we get to that part of the event, you'll be moved across seamlessly. Now, some people did sign up to multiple breakout rooms, but unfortunately, due to time constraints, you're only able to join one. Now, everyone should have been contacted to ask which one they prefer, but if there was no preference, then we've allocated you to one. If you've got a speaker-only ticket, but you would now like to join a group, please stay in the room after Dr. Lungren has finished speaking and we'll allocate you a space. Now, in the breakout sessions, we've allocated a facilitator and a scribe to each room, and the facilitators have a few questions to kick off the discussion. And the scribe is there to pull together a summary of the discussion, and will circulate these summaries to all attendees within a week of the event. The breakout session will last for 45 minutes, and then we'll all come back together for the closing remarks, so the main event will finish by about 4:30. However, we wanted to provide you with a more informal opportunity to network or to finish off the conversations that you've started, so we'll leave the meeting open until 5 p.m. if you wish to stay. But feel free during the meeting to make use of the chat function to let other attendees know why you're here, what you're interested in, and feel free to put in a link to your LinkedIn profile if you want people to connect. So to wrap up the procedure part of the event, I want to let you know that we're recording the event today, and this will be posted on the TVAI Hub website under the Libraries tab after the event. And to note, this won't show the chat function. And you can find recordings of most of our previous events on there as well. If you're having any technical difficulties, please email our email address, tvaihub@reading.ac.uk, and we're monitoring the inbox throughout the event. So I hope that's all clear. Honestly, it's so lovely to see so many of you here today and to be hosting our first interactive workshop session. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Lynn Collins to give you an overview of Bayer LifeHub UK. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Sarah. And just to add what you've just said there, it's so great to see so many people interested in this topic. I know that I certainly am. And it's really great to be able to represent the Bayer LifeHub UK. So just for anyone who doesn't know, Bayer has 7 life hubs globally around the world, and they all have a different focus. The one in the UK's main focus is on artificial intelligence in radiology projects, and we work with external partners also with the NHS on developing AI projects, some specifically for the NHS and some for global projects for radiology. We also have a focus on external events, just like this one. So I'm so pleased to see, I can see from the participants, we're already up to 60 people attending. And one of the things that we really enjoy is our internal innovation, promotion and collaboration, both with external partners like our collaboration with the Thames Valley AI Hub, and then also internally with Bayer for being able to produce more products. So the first thing I would like to add is the great speaker that we've got today. So Dr. Matthew Lungren, thank you so much for joining us. For anyone who can't tell, he's in his scrubs waiting to go to hospital straight after this, and also the fact that it's 7 a.m. where he is now. So thank you for joining us. He practices at Stanford Hospital and is the co-director of the Stanford Center for Artificial Intelligence in Medicine and Imaging since 2018. So we're really pleased to have him for us today, and he's going to do his talk on a topic that I know that you're very keen to understand. So Matthew, over to you for you to share your slides, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn, and thanks everybody for having me here. Let me share my slides. Yes, it is early, but it's okay. I'm always excited to talk about imaging and AI together anyway, so this is a good way to wake up in the morning. So yeah, I'm going to talk about some challenges for implementing clinical AI. I'm going to talk a little bit about our center and some of the approaches we've taken, and then kind of veer off into some other opportunities that we have as a field to realize some of the potential of these tools and technologies. These are my disclosures. So I realized that I gave this talk for a British Institute of Radiology talk on election day, which was also a chaotic day. Today happens to be inauguration day, which for those of you who aren't in the US, there's a lot of news happening. I like this headline from election day where, you know, Americans are just having a hard time right now. So just, you'll have to bear with us. Hopefully the news cycle washes out a lot of the chaos and we'll get back to being a normal society again. We're all looking forward to that from our side. But we're going to talk a little bit about talk about something a little bit more broad. And you know, I think that as we think about why we're all so excited and working so hard in this field, is not just that we've had technological advances, it's also because we know that there are going to be critical issues with delivery of healthcare worldwide. The WHO has told us this for years. We're projecting massive physician shortfalls, and the ability to deliver care is increasingly challenged. At the same time, you know, our traditional ways of training clinicians may not be able to get the job done in the future. I mean, for those of you who recognize that it takes 10 plus years to train, for example, a radiologist with, you know, regular sort of updates with continuing medical education, that was an okay system in the 50s when medical knowledge doubled every 50 years or so, right? You could finish out your career and still be at the top of your game, or, you know, up to date. We're now in a situation where medical knowledge is doubling every few months. There's just no way to continue to remain relevant and understand all of the advances throughout medicine. And it requires us to become increasingly subspecialized, almost to the point where our general skills are completely sort of gone by the wayside. And so AI presents a potential opportunity for us as well. And we recognize that, you know, dealing with massive amounts of knowledge is going to be an increasing challenge as we practice medicine. And then of course, money is involved, right? So, you know, there's a huge amount of investment, as many of you already are aware, in particular in radiology AI, but across the healthcare landscape. Obviously, we do work in projects in all aspects of medicine at Stanford, and certainly with other groups around the world. And so we recognize that this massive investment is going to lead to a lot of opportunities, but also potential challenges. And I'm going to talk about that as we go. Here's what I like to call the clown car slide, which is really, these are just a sample, frankly, of the companies that are involved in the imaging AI space. These are vendors that were presenting at the 2019 RSNA. Almost too many to count at this point, but a lot of different industries are getting into this space. And, you know, again, it presents a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, some challenges on what we're going to do as healthcare systems, and certainly as researchers in dealing with these different advancements coming from all over. I like to try to think about opportunities for groups to really lead this field. And, you know, I kind of think about the different ingredients that are really critically important for success beyond technical knowledge and having compute power. And you really need to think about, do you have the interdisciplinary team knowledge? Do you have the domain experts on both the computer science side? Do you have the domain experts on the clinical side? Do you have the infrastructure for evaluation? Can you disseminate your work? Do you have access to data? These are all challenges, but, you know, I would argue that pharma and academic medical centers are in excellent position to continue to lead and innovate in this field due to sort of the fact that they have these ingredients, these critical components, and I would say data being one of the chief among them, but certainly the different levels of domain expertise play a huge role. These are sort of the things that set the stage for us to start the AMU Center. We started with 4 faculty in 2018, and here we are now with over 110. We have, dozens and dozens of different projects in application for AI across healthcare in practically every specialty you can imagine. And we have, again, computer science luminaries, lots of students, certainly data and applications to deliver this. And this is really where we wanted to sort of set up a community that allowed us to really organize and communicate our findings. So again, we started the AMU Center. This is our mission statement, which is not terribly exciting or innovating right at this point. That you probably see the same kind of language at most places that are looking to get into space. But one key difference I'm going to highlight is this one. So we had to make a choice as to whether we were going to work and sort of in our siloed Stanford space, or are we going to try to open up the work that we're doing both on the education front, the data front, certainly the model front, to allow researchers around the world to participate, to innovate on the work that we've done, and to share our work more broadly and again, build on it. And that's kind of been a core difference as to our approach versus a lot of others. We see this as, again, a collaborative effort, certainly an education and engagement effort, and then sort of an opportunity to innovate around the data science research and infrastructure components. So, these are critical areas where, we saw opportunities and how we tend to build out our center and how we've made impact to this point. Just without belaboring it too much, we've started a lot of programs that have allowed us to innovate in sort of outreach and education. Again, we recognize that, more and more around the world, we get hundreds and hundreds of people reaching out that have learned to code on their own or have computer science or technical backgrounds and are looking to our center and others to find opportunities to, what are some pain points? What are things that we can work on? We've tried to set up challenges. We've tried to, make data available, as I've said, and a lot of these opportunities have really allowed us to sort of, again, make the field more attractive to those who traditionally have not gotten into clinical AI, mainly because of the lack of data availability and certainly a lack of domain expertise. We created an education program. Initially, this was for our Stanford faculty that did not have a technical background, was the point of this curriculum. We ended up building it out and putting it on Coursera for anyone to access. Again, this is the first sort of comprehensive course that allows people without technical backgrounds to really get a handle on all the concepts and principles for machine learning in healthcare. That includes pitfalls, statistics, metrics, implementation science, bias, and ethics. And so we really tried to cover everything that, sort of the least you need to know to get involved without having to code or do mathematical proofs of loss functions. And we were, so far it's been very successful. It has certainly helped our faculty participate in multidisciplinary teams and lead projects. We've also released a lot of data sets. As I've mentioned, we've released more AI-ready medical imaging data sets than any other center. And again, the key is having the labels, right? So a lot of folks are able to release potentially anonymized imaging data, but that's not enough. Having those critical domain expert labels is the key to success, as many of you are in the space know. And we have a roadmap for about 15 or 20 more data sets to come in the next year or so. We have a robust collaboration platform where we partner with industry, including Bayer, in order to sort of find specific areas of overlap where we can work together and team up on initiatives. And a lot of times this really does involve opportunities to share learnings, to have data science work together to solve the same problem. There's a lot of innovation happening. What you'll find is maybe you've got a CS degree or maybe you have someone on your team, but there's something, this technical debt that accrues almost the moment you graduate in such a fast moving field sort of demands that there be interaction with sort of an ongoing source of up-to-date knowledge. You just can't keep up with the literature fast enough in order to really be effective. And so this is a critical area where we find that we learn a lot from industry and certainly vice versa. But I wanted to point out something that I think has escaped a lot of the early discussions about medical imaging. I think that, there were the initial success stories. Certainly we've had a lot of success where we're able to develop tools that can perform at the level of expert radiologists, and that's fantastic. aside from the fact that the real world is not the laboratory environment, the other issue is, of course, that there's more than just the single pixel image, right? To the job that we do, the cognitive work that radiologists do. And we've known that for a long time. It's surprising to me that we're just now starting to explore the space. We've tried to say, our literature has told us for decades that without clinical and laboratory data, interpretation of medical imaging is difficult, right? There's a lot of gray that sort of pops up in some of the discussions around generalization and bias, a lot of and ground truth, by the way, and a lot of that can be avoided if we can think of strategies to incorporate the contextual data as we're sort of analyzing these medical imaging examinations. And again, this isn't just in radiology, this is pathology, ophthalmology, practically any specialty that leverages pixel information that's not done in a vacuum. You'll often find that there are plenty of data that tell us that we need to know what's going on with the patient. We need to know the history. We need to know priors, right? We need to be able to compare across priors. And I won't talk about it too much today, but there's also been a lot of work coming out of our lab and others where we're also building in that additional capacity to compare the current image with prior imaging examinations. These are all tasks that are possible with modern computer vision techniques and multimodal data fusion. And so this is sort of where we believe there's going to be a lot of interest, certainly from the work that we've done, but also this is important for all of you, whether or not you're developing these tools. If you're interested in implementing these tools, you have to future-proof this in a way that allows you to accommodate for models that are going to be multimodal. So you may have a great computer vision model that works on chest x-rays, but hey, a pandemic comes along and now you're in trouble because your model has significantly drifted due to just a huge distribution shift, right? Obviously, that's a really nice use case for us to sort of say, we need to figure out a way to create models that are more contextually aware. And it is possible to do that. And we've actually shown that fusion modeling with pixel and non-pixel data generally increases performance of imaging models. But in addition to that, it also sort of helps us address the significant challenges that we've all seen, which are focused on generalizability and certainly bias. If you're interested in learning more about this, we did a meta-analysis in one of the Nature journals to talk about both what fusion looks like, different techniques for fusion that's already been used in medicine, and then sort of strategies to how to choose which fusion modeling architecture approach that might work for you given a given task. So feel free to check this out. It's an open source paper. All right, so as we look at what we need, we certainly feel like data science and data access are obviously critical for what we do. But remembering that now I just mentioned to you that we're going to increasingly enter a cross-modality space. And we haven't traditionally done that. Even in the computer science community, right? There's an NLP group and there's a computer vision group, and they often don't interact to any significant degree. Medicine is going to have to be one of those situations where the multidisciplinary team expands beyond just, hey, I'm the NLP person, just give me NLP things, and I'm the vision person, and we have to be able to work together. And this is, of course, coming up all the time as we're deploying these models that do take information from across specialties and certainly loop back into the monitoring aspect. And then finally, in delivery. And so as I look at sort of where we are, and again, I'm not embarrassed to say even as a leading center, we have strengths certainly in these first areas, but I'll tell you, we haven't mastered, and we're currently working on mastering this cross-modality approach, which is really linking, even identify, but also de-identify data from across modalities, across specialties together. And then finally, the delivery science, which is what I want to focus on a little bit today, which is again, a sort of a blue sky right now. I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities to deliver these systems into practice, but we don't have a lot of knowledge about how they interact with the ecosystem of healthcare. And as many of you know, things can work really well in the lab, but that doesn't always work out in actual practice. So we need to have a system that can help us understand beyond just sort of the traditional 5 to 10 year clinical trial approach. How can we deliver these tools and get them to where they need to go? And for me, one of the biggest change agents for us, we've been talking about this for a long time, but it's difficult to get large institutions to move when it comes to saying, hey, we really need to create an infrastructure. We need to fund an infrastructure to do this. And so, it took us a long time to figure out a way to accomplish that. And so really COVID really provided an excellent use case for us to say it's arrived. We need these infrastructure and tools to deliver care to our patients as we're trying to learn on the ground. Our chief barriers have really been starting to bubble up, and these may be familiar to a lot of you. Choice. I showed you a slide with hundreds of different vendors. This is also true about Stanford, right? We have hundreds of PIs that have tools that they'd like to validate in clinic. How do we choose across our enterprise? How does any healthcare system choose which model to use? How do we know based on, is there a benchmark that we can use? There isn't, right? There aren't enough standards to know that right now, and making decisions around use case, but then also choice is critical. Validation, we currently lack a lot of validation tools. We don't have a great mechanism for that. Certainly we have ways to create test sets to sort of look at the different performances from different models and options, but how does it truly work in your practice? That question is not answered by the marketing guy from the AI startup. That's going to be answered by your team, needing to find the tools to easily to tell, hey, this company's model works well for my use case and this one underperforms. And then finally, it's really, it comes down to integration. And, again, even if you set aside the, significant challenges of just the nuts and bolts of implementing these tools, monitoring these tools, updating these tools requires enterprise level analytics. And that is not something that healthcare has traditionally been really awesome at. And we're going to increasingly be in a situation where that's critical because, as we know, you get this performance drift over time. This is not a healthcare specific problem. These models work great in testing. They may even show some performance improvements in production, but over time they drift. And there's plenty of literature. There's a group, Ben Glocker's group in particular, talking about causal inference. How do we really understand how our model's performing as it's running in real time? And again, as I like to say, this analogy is important because you think about one clinician who's underperforming may impact the healthcare of dozens, maybe 100 patients or so. A scaled system across the healthcare enterprise can impact thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients, and we can't be in a situation where we don't know the real-time performance of these systems. And I wanted to obviously touch on fairness and ethics. I mentioned it briefly before too, but really we're in a situation now where we're understanding, partially because of the opportunity to share data and to learn from others how it performs in other systems and other demographics and environments, but we are in a place where this is going to be paramount, and certainly our regulators and leadership will demand that we have shown that the systems that we're deploying do work on marginalized subpopulations. And if it doesn't, we need to know that, or the clinician using the tools needs to know where it works and where it doesn't. We like to say this is similar to the package that comes with any drug, which carefully details the situations in which it works and does not. And that's the kind of sort of push that we're making, obviously, with our collaboration with the FDA and others, as we say, how do we come up with a standardized metric for understanding what these tools really do? We try to break this down by utility. So again, we have this paralysis of choice, right? We have so many different options to potentially deliver, models from industry, models from labs in our in-house system. We really need to understand, again, the effect of the algorithm on our operations, right? Has it been studied effectively in a clinical practice in a way that allows us to know, is this worth doing? Just because we can doesn't mean we should. This is that discussion. Do we know what will happen when it's put into practice, and then the interpretation and downstream effects of that? So we may make the radiologist a little bit faster. Does that really impact the patient care outcomes? And that's increasingly becoming something that we're demanding of our scientists as we review journal articles on these new technologies. And then again, generally speaking, we sort of think about, do we know the impact on the system more broadly? So does it increase follow-ups? Does it decrease follow-ups? Do we cause potential issues with what we call treatment cascades? So we're identifying nodules that maybe we would have missed before. Does that really lead to better care? So this is like the list of things that people like to say are the current challenges in automating radiology. And I would argue that most of these are things that we can deal with, except for this last one. And this is why I'm circling the last one. I certainly can give you, some academic level talks on all of these other points, but the last one is really where we need to perform what I call intellectual arbitrage. In other words, we need to take the learnings from other verticals who have implemented these systems in a scaled way across an enterprise, and how they're deploying, how they're updating. These are things that we need to learn as healthcare practitioners in order to do this effectively. So I like to focus on the idea of a platform. Again, this is something that Bayer's doing a lot of work on, and really just trying to focus on, can we develop and deliver models that take all these factors into account? We're able to manage the data coming in, we're able to process the data. These are obviously the requirements, but then how do we determine which algorithms we're going to run at which type, at which center, in which clinical situation? And then do we have a robust quality and control management approach? You can't rely on the poor IT team in every hospital to have to deal with this additional layer of checking the algorithms every so often. This needs to be a process and a workflow that has stakeholders on the ground that are partnering with the teams to do this. And so I think that this platform and implementation is critical. We've taken a stepwise integration approach. This is something that comes out of the best practices in computer science. We're defining obviously everything ahead of time, as I sort of mentioned, and we do a lot of what we call shadow or canary deployments. Shadow deployments is where we're deploying in real time, but outside the clinical environment. So we're able to evaluate how it would have done if we had turned it on. And then canary deployments, of course, referring to taking a small subset of the practice and deploying there, where you have some guardrails and it doesn't impact the entire department right off the bat. So these are kind of some strategies that we've used to sort of get ease into this without breaking our systems. And then we deploy at scale, and we've done this, and we have methodologies for explainable monitoring thresholding. So we know when to pull it out of production, we know when to make those decisions. And this is the key, I think, of anything I'm going to tell you about today. Ongoing evaluation is critical. I think that, not that I would suggest that you just let us deal with all the implementation science and creating these tools for a practice, but it's really going to be on all of us in healthcare to decide how we're going to adapt, how we're going to improve the performance as it's going. So can we take advantage of continuous learning? And this is, again, an ongoing discussion, at least in the States, with our federal FDA body, where we're trying to discuss, can a healthcare system deal with a model that's continuously updated? But then can we correct the errors? Do we have feedback? Do we have buy-in from our practice? And then finally, can we anticipate issues, right? So I mentioned earlier, knowing where it works and where it doesn't, those things you can gain from the canary and shadow deployments to get a better sense of how this thing's actually going to work in your practice and what you might need to do differently. We deal a lot with regulation. I know you do too. I admit that I'm ignorant of a lot of the differences in the regulation in your area, certainly in the UK, but also in Europe in general. But I will say that we're all thinking about our regulators are asking us, we're asking our regulators. It's a very interesting time. You may have seen the most recent notification from the FDA suggesting that if you're a class 1 or a class 2, maybe you don't even need to get pre-market approval. That's a pretty bold statement that will open a lot of opportunities to implement models. But again, if we're not thinking about the infrastructure and again, these platforms for delivery that can take into account the implementation science, we will end up in some trouble. I can assure you, from someone who's done this the wrong way as well. So, as I kind of wrap up, I just want to think about some discussion points that I think everyone on this panel, when you go into your breakout rooms, can consider. How are you going to define your use case? It's not about can you, it's about should you. And then what real world problems are you solving? Do you have people coming into your office or to your leadership and saying, I really need a solution for X? Or are you just building something or using something because it seems cool, or it seems like it may help a little bit, but you're going to find out in real time? That's not necessarily the most data-driven approach. We also think about how it can impact everyone. So maybe we have a tool that helps radiologists, but does it also help the point of care clinicians make decisions? And we do a lot of work with providing imaging AI solutions and trials to clinicians that don't normally interpret images. And that's a whole nother direction that I would encourage everyone to consider as they're talking about enterprise deployment. And then again, as I mentioned, at the outset, we're in a laggard position, and that's okay. we're in a position where we can take advantage of some of the learnings from other verticals. For example, Netflix, updates 1,000 times a day to tell you what movie to use. We probably want to have something that can update for healthcare in a way that would allow us to at least update, maybe once a day at least, right? But we're not there yet, and that's something that we need to discuss as we talk about our platforms and solutions that we're delivering. So I'll kind of leave it there, but thank you so much for having me, and I can take some questions in the chat if we have some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you for everyone who's already put a few questions in the chat. And just for information for everyone, there is breakout rooms for discussion on various topics. If you're not assigned to a breakout room and you want to be, then just hang on after this talk and you'll be assigned. So there was a few questions if you have time to answer. First one that I saw was, do you use ontologies as the foundation of understanding the meaning of words? I use knowledge graphs in my research. That's come from somebody in the audience.
Yeah, that's a great question. So ontologies it kind of boils back down to the idea of ground truth. I've seen groups use ICD codes as opposed to the sort of pulling out of the free text. So in the radiology space, rather than sort of develop an ontology or try to find one that's been developed and then bring out that structured data from free text reports in order to label at a larger scale. But again, we talk about federated learning, we talk about distributed learning, all of these potential things that we're going to try to use amongst healthcare systems, and as we agree on what we're going to do, require that we have a common ontology for the examinations that we're looking to sort of deal with. And so again, this came up actually just a year and a half ago with Mimic at MIT and us at Stanford. We both released large chest X-ray data sets with completely different ontologies for the labels, and even definitions on what if we said the same thing, what those definitions actually mean. So we actually ended up working together on a common data labeler, and we've deployed that, and that's open source actually. But it did draw attention to the idea that we have to agree at a larger scale, and so we're kind of turning to our societies. So the RSNA, the ACR. I know Eric Rancher at the European Society of Informatics is also. We've tried to coordinate with this on COVID as a use case. But again, ontologies are very important, and recognizing that even in the same practice, one radiologist might call something an infiltrate, the other one calls it an opacity, and then they both argue about what that means. That is one of the critical bottlenecks for some of the systems that we're deploying, and particularly when you have it sitting in front of radiologists and they're disagreeing with the terminology. So we are in a place where I think our societies can help us organize around that, and there have been a lot of papers. But yes, it's a tremendous challenge for us, and something we're all working on.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm just conscious of time and the ability for us to move into our breakout rooms for a bit more focused chat. So just to take this opportunity to say thank you. If there is any other questions that come through, we'll pass them on. If you're able to answer them at a later date, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. I'm generally pretty available, so reach out to me, email, LinkedIn, whatever, Twitter, and happy to continue the discussion. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope you have a great conference. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good day, Matthew.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So I think now we'll go into our breakout rooms. So I think Rowan is going to press the button and everyone should go into their breakout rooms. And there's a few people not been assigned if you've joined up through Meetup or if you've got a speaker only ticket. So just hang on where you are, and then we'll assign you to a room when everyone else has gone through. Well, thank you all so much for coming along today and for your contributions this afternoon. You might have seen me, I was popping in and out of the different sessions, and it was really lovely to hear such informed and interesting discussions that you're all having. In the interest of time, we're not going to hear back from each room, but as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be circulating a summary of each discussion to all the attendees via email in the next week. But if there's anything anyone particularly wants to feed back on, then please do say for the networking session at the end, and we can continue a wider discussion. When you log out, you'll be asked to complete a short questionnaire about the event. The feedback's anonymous, and we'd really appreciate it if you could fill it in, as it helps us to improve the overall content of our events. This is a network for the community, and it's the first time we've held breakout room discussions, and we'd be really interested to know what you thought about that format. I very much hope you've enjoyed the event and the discussions today. I hope that we'll see you all at our next joint event, which is scheduled for June. And it'll be an opportunity to hear from the OAHSN, the Oxford Academic Health and Science Network, the NIHR, who is the National Institute for Health Research, and the KTN, the Knowledge Transfer Network. And this will all be about funding opportunities for healthcare projects. And it'd be absolutely brilliant if some of the ideas for today were worked up enough to be considered possible funding options by then. So who knows? That's all I wanted to say. So I'll just pass over to Lynn in case she wanted to say anything as well.
Thank you, Sarah. And just once again, thank you to everyone for joining us. I know that the discussions have been very different. I'm really excited to see what the other 3 breakout rooms were like. And well, I'm sure there was lots of different topics. It'll be great, Sarah, that the content for each breakout room is shared, because I know some of our topics might have leaked into. I know that some of the other topics were there. So I think that will be very helpful for the participants. And just to thank you again, I know the speaker was great, and it was a shame that he couldn't stay. I know that he wanted to, but he had his clinical practice to go to. So hopefully everyone has found this very beneficial. I know I certainly did, and that we'll have all the notes ready and be sharing that with the whole team. So thank you from the Bayer LifeHub as well.
Lynn. Yeah, no, we were very keen to make sure that everyone gets the notes, because I know there's a lot of people who wanted to attend more than one breakout group, so there's a lot of cross interest between all these groups. Yeah. Okay, so we normally would just close the event now, but we thought we might leave it open for a bit longer. So if you want to leave, that's absolutely fine. Or if you'd like to stay and talk a little bit more about things you've been thinking about today, then please do. I said we've not done this before. I'm not sure how it's going to work. Yeah, so either it was lovely if you want to be here. So thank you for joining, and please stay on if you want to. And if not, hopefully we'll see you at another event very soon. So thank you.
Thank you.